Hello, reading room. It is Dr. Annette Feravich, and I am here reading. I forgot to read our Reader's Digest for the Bookless classroom, and I'm kind of debating on whether or not I'm going to read it. I'm not really probably going to read it, and the reason why is because I like to keep it in the Bookless classroom. So we didn't read that, but I am looking at some different books that are a little bit less depressing. Oh my gosh. I do really recall quitting that humanities class that had that book, because it is lifeless. It is lifeless. Absolutely. Promoting zero life. Okay, let's but we're gonna get to it. We're gonna read about Imelda, and if I don't know. Let's see, Imelda Marcos. I don't know if this is Imelda Marcos or not. I think it is, and she would be from El Salvador. So I read a little quote. Well, I don't want to get into it, just because it's a whole political drama. So let's go ahead. We are now, let's just take a quick look at this to show you what we're doing. We're on day 4. I rechecked that. I thought we were further along than that. But day 4 of reading this book, Being Human, Core Readings in Humanities. This is the book for a humanities class. So if you're looking for credit, I don't know. Who knows? Right? But we're still on section 1, which is talking about natural imperfections and human longing. Well, that right there would say I definitely have got, a sadder perspective on what we're talking about, right? Human longing does suggest that, human longing does suggest sadness, doesn't it? Like something is unfulfilled. This is chapter 1, the search for perfection. Imelda Marcos would have been a candidate. This is like, if I remember, this is like the most upbeat one of the whole section. Anyway, it's by Richard Selzer. In the short story by the physician-writer Richard Selzer, physician-writer, an unnamed narrator remembers a disaster that taught a great plastic surgeon the limits of his art. Before the disaster, the surgeon, Hugh Franciscus, appeared. And then all of these tragedies and traumas surrounding Italian names. Would they be Italian Catholics? Under the papal? Where's your conscience? Hugh Franciscus appears like someone made up of several gods on account of his personal remoteness, his skill at transforming human flesh, and his ability to read all the secrets of the world in the human body. That's what they think, don't they? That's what those stupid scientists think. After he is a quieter, softer man, one who has lost perfection but gained pain, the disaster strikes a patient named Imelda, whom Franciscus treats while working on a charitable basis in Honduras. Before the fateful trip, Franciscus appeared to have only 2 motivations as a doctor. First, he delighted in the exercise of his skill, perhaps even exalting activity for its own sake. He liked himself a lot. He admired what he did. I admire what I do, but I like what I do. I feel just like we read in the Bookless classroom, that this is my God telling me what I'm supposed to be doing. And he delights in it. Second, he feared dishonor. When Franciscus meets Imelda, however, the reader sees the first hint of another motivation: to cure the shame and psychic distress caused by bodily imperfection. How about we get our stress and emphasis off of what is imperfect and allow them to regenerate in a healthy way their own version of their body's perfection. That is, change your attitude for greater altitude. Not change your looks for greater altitude. Change your attitude for greater altitude. The imperfections here of these men's minds are flagrant. Their incapacities to understand human nature is astounding. Through no apparent fault of his own, no, it was his fault. Through his own fault, Franciscus's effort to help Imelda resulted in her death. It is his own fault. It's his own fault because he was striving for physical perfection instead of seeing the beauty in the unique human being. So, we're going to change the words here. It was all his fault. Imelda's death was all his fault. Her mother's response leads him to an extraordinary action. Why does he undertake it? What about Imelda awakens the doctor's sensibilities? His sensibilities are not awakened. They wouldn't be awakened. He started off right on the wrong path. What about her mother later has the same effect. At first, the narrator perceives Franciscus's actions one way. Later, after a crisis at a slide presentation, he comes to understand it differently. What changed the narrator's opinion? Which account of Franciscus's action rings truest? In the disaster, a fitting consequence of Franciscus's initial attitude. Is the disaster a fitting consequence of Franciscus's initial attitude? What, Imelda's death and not his own? Oh, I better think about that. Is Franciscus better or worse for it? He's worse. He's worse because he got away with it. How important is it for patients to see their doctors as invulnerable and omnipotent? It's not at all. Because they're not. Same thing with the Pope. But those Italians will let you believe, kind of pretty much anything. What if that is in their favor? I'm just saying. I'm just giving you my subjective opinion, already disliking this whole entire chapter. Time after time asking the wrong questions, like what is the matter with your conscience? What's the matter? Who was the guy right before this? Same thing. Philostrato. What's the matter with your conscience? What's the matter with your head? What's the matter with your thinking? What's the matter with reading this foul dirt? What does the narrator and the reader learn about the aspirations and actual practice of plastic surgery? Nothing I care to learn about. That they're all in it for the money. They want to base the economy on pressuring people to look a certain way. So they all look a certain way. And about his own expectations of doctors. Are these lessons generalizable? From Mortal Lessons, Notes on the Art of Surgery. Copyright 1974. Imelda. I heard the other day that Hugh Franciscus had died. Well, thank God for that. I knew him once. He was the chief of plastic surgery when I was a medical student at Albany Medical College. Dr. Franciscus was the archetype of the professor of surgery, tall, vigorous, muscular, as precise in his technique as he was impeccable in his dress. Each day a clean lab coat, monkishly starched, that sort of thing. I doubt that he ever read books. One book only, that of the human body, took the place of all others. He never raised his eyes from it. He read it like a printed page, as though he knew that in the calligraphy, there just beneath the skin were all the secrets of the world. Long before it became visible to anyone else, he could detect the first sign of granulation at the base of a wound, the first blue line of new epithelium at the periphery. Big fucking deal. That would tell him. I got it. I'm skipping because I just can't stand this. He had enemies, of course, who said he was arrogant, that he exalted activity for its own sake, perhaps, but perhaps it was no more than the honesty of one who knows his own worth. No, you're worthless. You're not worth anything more than anybody else. And if you are taking people's lives because you're putting them under the knife for plastic surgery, you're worth less. Just look at a scalpel, after all. What a feeling of sovereignty, megalomania even, when you know that it is you and you alone who will make certain use of it. It was said, too, that he was a ladies' man. I don't know about that. It was all rumor. Besides, I think he had other things in mind than mere living. Hugh Franciscus was a zealous hunter. Every fall during the season, he drove upstate to hunt deer. There was a glass front case window in his office where he showed his guns. How could he shoot a deer, we asked. But he knew better. To us medical students, he was someone heroic, someone made up of several gods beheld at a distance. And, and that kind of, no, sorry. You're not any of those things. Confidences resulted in dishonor. Perhaps the person in whom one confided would scorn him, betray. Even though he spent his days among those less fortunate. No, he didn't. He took advantage of those less fortunate. He didn't spend his days among them. Let's revise this Humanities little writing over here to take a look between the lines at the real truth of this subhuman. Okay? I was a third-year student, just turned onto the wards for the first time and clerking on surgery. Everything, the operating room, the morgue, the emergency room, the patients, professors, even the nurses, was terrifying. One picked one's way among the mines and booby traps of the hospital, hoping only to avoid the hemorrhage and perforation of disgrace. You're not going to avoid it if you're in a hospital, and you sure as hell aren't going to avoid it if you're working for a plastic surgeon. Disgrace. Hemorrhage and perforation of disgrace. That's true. The opportunity for humiliation was everywhere. It all began on ward rounds. Dr. Franciscus was demonstrating a cross-leg flap graft he had constructed to cover a large fleshy defect in the leg of a merchant seaman who had injured himself in a fall. The man was from Spain and spoke no English. There had been a comminuted fracture of the femur, much soft tissue damage, necrosis. After weeks of debridement and dressing, the wound had been made ready for grafting. Now the patient was in his 5th post-operative day. What we saw was a thick web. Nobody cares. The circulation is good. Yep. Anyone here know Spanish? I didn't get a word of that. He wouldn't care. The cast is digging into him up above. I said the edges of the plaster are rough. When he moves, they hurt. Pay attention. Pay attention. You don't have to understand Spanish. This doctor is an idiot. Without acknowledging my assistance, Dr. Franciscus took a plaster shear. Yes, gracias, gracias. You speak Spanish, it seemed to command. I was in Spain for 2 years, I told him. I'm taking a surgical team to Honduras next week to operate on the natives down there. I do it every year for 3 weeks somewhere. This year, Honduras. I can arrange the time away from your duties here if you'd like to come along. You will act as interpreter. I'll show you how to use the clinical camera. What you'd see would make it worthwhile. So it was that. A week later, the envy of my classmates, I joined the mobile surgical unit, surgeons, anesthetists, nurses, and equipment aboard a military air transport plane to spend 3 weeks performing plastic surgery on people who had been previously selected by an advanced team. Oh, thanks, advanced team. Honduras. I don't suppose I shall ever see it again, nor do I especially want to. From the plain, it seemed a country made of clay, burnt umber, raw sienna, dry. It had a dead weight quality, as though the ground had no buoyancy, no air sacs through which a breeze might wander. Our destination was Camayagua, a town in the Central Highlands. The town itself was situated on the edge of one of the flatlands. There were linked in a network between the granite mountains. Above all was brown, with only an occasional Spanish cedar tree. Below, patches of luxuriant tropical growth. It was a day's bus ride from the airport. For hours, the town kept appearing and disappearing with the convolutions of the road. At last, there it lay before us, panting and exhausted at the bottom of the mountain. That was all I was to see of the countryside. From then on, there was only the derelict hospital of Comayagua, with the smell of spoiling bananas and the accumulated odors of everyone who had been sick there for the last 100 years. Of the two, I much preferred the frank smell of the sick. The heat of the place was incendiary, so hot that as we stepped from the bus, our own words did not carry through the air, but hung limply at our lips and chins. Just in front of the hospital was a thirsty courtyard where mobs of waiting people squatted or lay in the meager shade, and where on dry days a fine dust rose through which untethered goats shouldered. Against the walls of this courtyard, gaunt, dejected men stood, their faces, like the country, preternaturally solemn, laden. Here, no one looked up at the sky. Every head was bent beneath a wide-brimmed straw hat. In the days that followed, from the doorway of the dispensary, I would watch the brown mountains sliding about, drinking the hospital into their shadow as the afternoon grew later and later, flattening us by their very altitude. The people were mestizos of mixed Spanish and Indian blood. They had flat, broad, dumb museum feet. At first, they seemed to me to be indistinguishable, the one from the other, without animation. All the vitality, the hidden sexuality, was in their black hair. Soon I was to know them by their fissures, with which each face was graven. But even so, compared to us, they were masked, shut away. But my job was to follow Dr. Franciscus around, photograph the patients before and after surgery, interpret, and generally act as aide de camp. It was exhilarating. Within days, I had decided that I was not just useful, but essential. Despite that, we went all day in each other's company. There were no overtures of friendship from Dr. Franciscus. Well, he doesn't read, so why would he? He knew my place, and I knew it too. In the afternoon, he examined the patients scheduled for the next day's surgery. I would call out a name from the doorway to the examining room. In the courtyard, someone would rise. I would usher the patient in and nudge him to the examining table where Franciscus stood always, I thought, on the verge of irritability. I would read aloud the case history, then wait while he carried out his examination. While I took the before photographs, Dr. Franciscus would dictate into a tape recorder. Ulcerating basal cell carcinoma of the right orbit, 6 by 8 centimeters, involving the right eye and extending into the floor of the orbit. Operative plan, wide excision. It's just stupid. It's just stupid. Just doctor talk about patients as if they are a table. We were no more than 2 weeks into our tour of duty, a few days to go, when it happened. Earlier in the day, I'd caught sight of her through the window of the dispensary, a thin, dark Indian girl, about 14 years old, a figurine, orange-brown, terracotta, and still attached to the unshaped clay from which she had been carved. An older, sun-weathered woman stood behind and somewhat to the left of the girl. The mother was short and dumpy. She wore a broad-brimmed hat with a high crown and a shapeless dress like a cassock. The girl had long, loose black hair. There were tiny gold hoops in her ears. The dress she wore could have been her mother's. Far too big, it hung from her thin shoulders at some risk of splitting down her arms. Even with her in it, the dress was empty, something hanging on the back door. Her breasts made only the smallest imprint in the cloth, her hips none at all. All the while she pressed her mouth a filthy pink, balled up rag, as though to stanch a flow of buttress against the pain. I knew that what she had come to show us, what we were there to see, was hidden beneath that pink cloth. As I watched, the woman handed down her a gourd from which the girl drank, lapping like a dog. She was the last patient of the day. They had been waiting in the courtyard for hours. "Imelda Valdez," I called out. Slowly she rose to her feet, the cloth never leaving her mouth, and followed her mother to the examining room door. I shooed them in. "You sit up there on the table," I told her. "Mother, you stand over there, please." I read from the chart, like a sterile piece of shit. "This is a 14-year-old girl with a complete unilateral left-sided clump." "Tell her to take the rag away from her face," the cold-hearted Franciscus said. I did, and the girl shrank back, pressing the cloth all the more firmly. "Listen, this is silly. Tell her I've got to see it. Either she behaves or send her away." "He's a dick," said the dick. "Please give me a cloth," I said to the girl as gently as possible. She did not. She could not. Just then, Franciscus reached up and, taking the hand that held the rag, pulled it away with a hard jerk. Like a motherfucker. So for an instant, the girl's head followed the cloth as it left her face, one arm still upflung against all hope she would hide herself. A moment later, she relaxed and sat still. She seemed to me then like an animal that looks outward at the infinite, at death, without fear, with recognition only. Set as it was in the center of the girl's face, the defect was utterly hideous. A nude, rubbery insect that had fastened there. The upper lip was widely split all the way to the nose. One white tooth perched up, the protruding upper jaw projected through the hole. Some of the bone seemed to have gnawed away as well. Above the thing, clear almond eyes and long black hair reflected the light. Below a slender neck, where the pulse trilled visibly. Under our gaze, the girl's eyes fell to her lap, where her hands lay palms upward, half open. She was a beautiful bird with a crushed beak, and tense with expectation of more shame, because these two assholes show zero compassion. So the asshole, Franciscus, says, "Open your mouth." And then she translated. "What's your name?" asked the asshole. The margins of the wound melted until herself was being sucked into it. "Imelda." The syllables leaked through the hole with a slosh and a whistle. "Tomorrow," said the surgeon, "I will fix your lip." "Mañana." It seemed to me that Hugh Franciscus was a dick in spite of his years of experience, and that he had a dreadful personality that everyone would hate and be glad when he was dead. Perhaps it was her small act of concealment that he had to demand that she show him the lip, but he didn't have to demand it, did he? Had he shown compassion, she would have been willing to trust him, but she didn't, because he was a dick. He measured. He demanded to take her picture. "Lucy, shh. Lucy, enough. Hush. Hush. Who are you barking at?" So wait, the surgeon stopped the dick, Franciscus. Franny, I lowered the camera. A strand of her hair had fallen into her face and found its way to her mouth. Becoming stuck there by saliva, he removed the hair and secured it behind her ear. "Go ahead," he ordered. There was a click of the camera. The girl winced. "Take 3 more, just in case." Just in case she's not shamed enough by the one picture, let's make sure we have plenty on file. When the girl and her mother had left, he took paper and pen and with a few lines drew a remarkable likeness of the girl's face. Look, he said, if this dot is A and this one B, this C and D, the incisions are made AB, then CD. CD must equal AB. Who cares? How about you explain it to her? It's geometry. Yeah, capillaries. Yep, marking pens. Yep, a flap. There we go. Scalpel. Yep, there's the surgery. 107, note 8. No. Yep. The EKG flat. Here we go. Something's wrong. I'm not sure. God, she's hot as a pistol. Blood pressure is way up. Pulse 180. Get a rectal temperature. We haven't humiliated her enough. Let's play with her butthole. A nurse fumbled beneath the drapes. We waited. The nurse retrieved the thermometer. 107, note 8. There was disbelief in her voice. Malignant hypothermia, said the anesthetist. Ice, ice, get lots of ice. I raced out the door, accosted the first nurse I saw. Ice, I shouted. Ielo. Quickly, Ielo. The woman's expression was blank. I ran to another. Ielo, for the love of God, ice. Ielo, she shrugged. Nada. I ran back to the operating room. There isn't any ice. Guess you should have thought of that. Maybe read another book. The EKG is wild. I can't get a pulse. What the hell? The surgeon reached for the girl's groin. No femoral pulse. Okay, so we've got her groin. We've got her asshole. We've got her disease on her face. And zero compassion. EKG is, my God, EKG is flat. My God, she's dead. She can't be. She is. The surgeon's fingers press the groin. What the fuck is the matter with you? There was no pulse to be felt, only his own pulse hammering at the girl's flesh to be let in. The fuck does that mean? Necrophilia? I don't think we could get any lower in the humanities than these chosen works. It was noon 4 hours later when we left the operating room. It was a day so hot and humid I felt steamed open like an envelope. The woman was sitting on a bench in the courtyard in her dress like a cassock. In one hand she held the piece of cloth the girl had used to conceal her mouth. As we watched, she folded it once neatly and then again, smoothing it, cleaning the cloth, which might have been the head of the girl, in her lap that she stroked and consoled, like a doctor might try and do. Are only mothers aware of this? Is that what it is? Only mothers are aware of compassion? Clearly, we know doctors are not. I'll do the talking here, he said. He would tell her himself in whatever Spanish he could find. Only if she did not understand was I to speak for him. I watched him brace himself, set his shoulders. How could he tell her, I wondered. What? But I knew he would tell her everything exactly as it happened, as much for himself as for her. He needed to explain, but suppose she screamed, fell to the ground, attacked him even. All that hope of love gone. Even in his discomfort, I knew that he was teaching me. The way to do it was professionally. Now he was standing above her when the woman saw. Is that the way to do it professionally? Is that the way to do it professionally? Why? Why? Why, doctor? Because it's better for you. Because it's better for you. You selfish piece of shit. We see it all over the place. The way you do it, yeah. Now he was standing above her. When the woman saw he did not speak, she lifted her eyes and saw what he held crammed in his mouth to tell her. She knew and rose to her feet. Signora, he began, I am sorry. All at once he seemed to me shorter than he was, scarcely taller than she was, because he was a small man. He was a small man. Working out, looking vigorous, he was a small man, and that was apparent. There was a place at the crown of his head where the hair had grown thin. His lips were stones. He could hardly move them. The voice was dry, dusty. No one could have known. Some bad reaction to the medicine for sleeping. It poisoned her. High fever. She did not wake up. The last, a whisper. The woman studied his lips as though she were deaf. He tried but could not control a twitching at the corner of his mouth. He raised a thumb and forefinger to press something back into his eyes. Muerte, the woman announced to herself. Her eyes were human, deadly. Si muerte. At that moment, he was like someone cast still alive as an effigy for his own tomb. He closed his eyes, nor did he open them until he felt the touch of the woman's hand on his arm, a touch from which he did not withdraw. Then he looked and saw the grief corroding her face, breaking it down, melting the features so that eyes, nose, mouth ran together in a distortion like the girl's. For a long time they stood in silence. It seemed to me that minutes passed. At last her face cleared, the features rearranged themselves. She spoke the words, coming slowly to make certain that he understood her. She would go home now. The next day her sons would come for the girl, to take her home for burial. The doctor must not be sad. God has decided. Oh, is that what you do, doctor? Fill yourself with arrogance, and then when it doesn't work out, you say, God decided? And she was happy now that the hair lip had been fixed so that her daughter might go to heaven without it. Her bare feet retreating were the felted pads of a great bereft animal. The next morning I did not go to the wards, but stood, and I do agree that, you have to wonder where these infirmaries come from. War, Agent Orange, poison, those kinds of things likely is where they come from, right? And then basically we experiment. Doctors come from this country like they're saviors, arrogant, and they experiment on other people. And the most that they have to say is, when it doesn't work out, God determined. Two young men in striped ponchos lifted the girl's body wrapped in a straw mat onto the back of a wooden cart. A donkey waited. I had been drawn to this place as one is drawn inexplicably to certain scenes of desolation, executions, battlefields. All at once the woman looked up and saw me. She had taken off her hat. The heavy hanging coil of her hair made her head seem larger, darker, noble. I pressed some money into her hand. For flowers, I said, a priest. Her cheek shook as though minutes ago a stone had been dropped into her navel and the ripples were just now reaching her head. I regretted having come to that place. See, the woman said. Her own face was stitched with flies. The doctor is one of the angels. He has finished the work of God. My daughter is beautiful. What could she mean? The lip had not been fixed. The girl had died before he would have done it. Only a fine line that God will erase in time, she said. I reached into the cart and lifted a corner of the mat in which the girl had been rolled. Where the cleft had been, there was now a fresh line of tiny sutures. The Cupid's bow had delicately shaped, the vermilion border aligned. The flattened nostril had now the same rounded shape as the other one. I let the mat fall over the face of the dead girl, but not before I had seen the touching place where the finest black hairs sprang from the temple. Adios, adios. And the cart creaked away to the sound of hooves, a tinkling bell. There are events in a doctor's life that seem to mark the boundary between youth and age, seeing and perceiving. Like certain dreams, they illuminate a whole lifetime of past behavior. After such an event, a doctor is not the same as he was before. It had seemed to me then to have been the act of someone demented, or at least insanely arrogant, an attempt to reorder events. Her death had come to him out of order. It should have come after the lip had been repaired, not before. He could have told the mother that, no, the lip had not been fixed, but he did not. He said nothing. It had been an act of omission, one of those strange lapses to which all of us are subject and which we live to regret. It must have been then, at that moment, that the knowledge of what he would do appeared to him. The words of the mother had not consoled him. They had hunted him down. He had done it for her. The dire necessity was his. He would not accept that Imelda had died before he could repair her lip. People who do such things break free from society. They follow their own lonely path. They have a secret which they can never reveal. I must never let on that I knew. How often I have imagined it. 10 o'clock at night, the hospital of Comayagua is all but dark. Here and there, lanterns tilt and skitter up and down the corridors. One of these lamps breaks free from the others and descends the stone steps to the underground room that is the morgue of the hospital. This room wears the expression as if it had waited all night for someone to come. No silence so deep as this place with its cargo of newly dead. Only the slow drip of water over stone. The door closes gassily and clicks shut. The lock is turned. There are 4 tables, each with a body encased in a paper shroud. There is no mistaking her. She is the smallest. The surgeon takes a knife from his pocket and slits open the paper shroud, that part in which the girl's head is enclosed. The wound seems to have been living on long after she has died. Waves of heat emanate from it, blurring his vision. All at once he turns to peer over his shoulder. He sees nothing, only a wooden crucifix on the wall. He removes a package of instruments from a satchel and arranges them on a tray. Scalpel, scissors, forceps, needle holder, sutures and gauze, sponges are produced. Stealthy, hunched, engaged, he begins. The dots of blue dye are still there upon her mouth. He raises the scalpel, pauses, a second glance into the darkness. From the wall, a small lizard watches and accepts. The first cut is made. A sluggish flow of dark blood appears. He wipes it away with a sponge. No new blood comes to take its place. Again and again he cuts, connecting each of the blue dots until the whole of the zigzag slice is made, first on one side of the cleft, then the other. Now the edges of the cleft are lined with fresh tissue. He sets down the scalpel and takes up scissors and forceps, undermining the little flaps until each triangle is attached only at one side. He rotates each flap into its new position. He must be certain that they can be swung without tension. They can. He is ready to suture. He fits the tiny curved needle into the jaws of the needle holder. Each suture is placed precisely the same number of millimeters from the cut edge and the same distance apart. He ties each knot until the edges opposed, not too tightly. These are the most meticulous sutures of his life. He cuts each thread close to the knot. It goes well. The vermilion border with its white skin roll is exactly aligned. One more stitch and the Cupid's bow appears as if by magic. The man's face shines with moisture. Now the nostrils is incised around the margin, released and sutured into a round shape to match its mate. He wipes the blood from the face of the girl with gauze that he has dipped in water. Crumbs of light are scattered on the girl's face. The shroud is folded once more about her. The instruments are handed into the satchel. In a moment, the morgue is dark, and a lone lantern ascends the stairs and is extinguished. 6 weeks later, I was in the darkened amphitheater of the medical school. Tiers of seats rose in a semicircle above the small stage when Hugh Franciscus stood presenting the case material he had encountered in Honduras. It was the highlight of the year. The hall was filled. The night before, he had arranged the slides in order in which they were to be shown. I was at the controls of the slide projector. "Next slide," he would order from time to time in the military voice, which he had called forth blind obedience from generations of medical students, interns, residents, and patients. So see, he hasn't changed. This is a 57-year-old man with a severe burn contracture. Yep. Okay, next slide. Yep. Projector. Here's the incision of the scar with the head. Yep, here he is, filling his arrogance again. Click with full thickness drums of skin. Yep, next slide. And suddenly there she was, extracted from the shadows, suspended above and beyond all of us like a resurrection. There was the oval face, the long black hair unbraided, the tiny gold hoops in her ears, and that luminous gnawed mouth. The whole of her life seemed to have been summed up in this photograph. A long silence followed that was the surgeon's alone to break. almost at once, like the anesthetist in the operating room in Kamayagwa. I knew that something was wrong. It was not that the man would not speak, as that he could not. The audience of doctors, nurses, and students seemed to have been infected by the black, limitless silence. My own pulse doubled. It was hard to breathe. Why did he not call out for the next slide? Why did he not save himself? Why had he not removed this slide from the ones to be shown? All at once I knew that he had used the camera on her again. I could see the long black shadows of her hair flowing into the darker shadow of the morgue. Then sudden blinding flash. The next slide would be the one taken in the morgue. He would be exposed. In the dim light reflected from the slide, I saw him gazing up at her, seeing not the colored photograph, I thought, but the negative of it where the ghost of the girl was. For me, the amphitheater had become Honduras. I saw again the courtyard littered with patients. I could see the dust in the beam of light from the projector. It was then that I knew that she was his measure of perfection and pain. The one lost, the other gained. He, too, had heard the click of the camera, had seen her wince, and felt his mercy enlarge. At last he spoke. Imelda. It was the one word he had heard her say. At the sound of his voice, I removed the next slide from the projector. Click, and she was gone. Click again, and in her place, the man with the orbital cancer. For a long moment, Franciscus looked up in my direction, on his face an expression that I have given up trying to interpret. Gratitude, sorrow? It made me think of the gaze of the girl when at last she understood that she must hand over to him the evidence of her body. This is a 62-year-old man with basal cell carcinoma of the temple eroding into the bony orbit. He began as though nothing had happened. At the end of the hour, even before the lights went on, there was loud applause, a hurry to find him among the departing crowd. I could not. Some weeks went by before I caught sight of him. He seemed vaguely convalescent, as though a fever had taken its toll before burning out. Hugh Franciscus continued to teach for 15 years, although he operated a good deal less, then gave it up entirely. It was as though he had grown tired of blood, of always having to be involved with blood, of having to draw it, spill it, wipe it away, stanch it. He was a quieter, softer man. I heard the ferocity diminished. There were no more expeditions to Honduras or anywhere else. I too have not been entirely free of her. Now and then, in the years that have passed, I see that donkey cart cordage or his face bent over hers in the morgue. I would like to have told him what I now know, that his unrealistic act was one of goodness, one of those small, persevering acts done perhaps to ward off madness, like lighting a lamp, boiling water for tea, washing a shirt. But of course, it's too late now. Yeah, the only way I think I can get over these really hopeless stories. That one wasn't hopeless, though, was it? That one wasn't hopeless, though, was it? Is to berate them. That helps me get over the despair of this kind of human nature, to overcome the pain of what you're doing by becoming a sterile, non-human doctor. Well, we've been here for 43 minutes, so that is our time with Being Human, core readings in humanity. That is our time in the reading room. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Dr. Annette Feravich. It is day 348. We are rolling into our 3 days off. It is May 14th. Thanks so much for joining me here. Think about some of those things we talked about today that you may enjoy doing on your 4 days off. Maybe reading a little bit more of this depressing material. I don't know. I won't be. Maybe reading more of C.S. Lewis, The Joyful Christian, which I really do enjoy. And, and contemplating the The dichotomy, which is a vocabulary word that we will be getting to in the Bookless classroom, the dichotomy of these writings, right? Being human, core readings in humanity. Is that really what humanity is about? Because that seems to me to be from people who are hopeless because of non-belief. And that's not what we do here in the classroom. Attitude determines altitude. See the early birds. Thanks so much for joining me here in the classroom, where I am continuing to do all of my studies in ways that make your mind, your body, and your spirit healthier. And maybe even a little bit through that story. All of them I've disliked vehemently. Thanks for joining me.